the reality in Utah is that the gun lobby owns a lot of our Republican legislators, and it, they don't necessarily give a reason. They just go to them and say, "You're going to vote against this, or we're going to run you out of office." Um, it's a very sad reality, but that's sort of the way it is.
Hello, everyone. Today we'll be discussing gun legislation in Utah, and here to talk with us about that is Nancy Halden. She's the Communications Director for the Gun Violence Prevention Center of Utah. Nancy, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you for inviting us. We're always happy to talk to people about gun violence, about this issue.
It's great to have you. Nancy, tell us a little bit about the Gun Violence Prevention Center of Utah. What is its history and purpose?
Sure. It's an organization that's been around a long time, although I think a lot of people are not aware of who we are and what we do. Um, it was started by a couple, Ron and Norma Mullen, who lost their son on to a campus shooting in the 80s, and he was actually trying to protect a girl, and I think a suitor of hers had a gun and was angry, and he got in the way and was killed. It was very tragic, and they were longtime Utah residents, and they came back and they said, this is wrong. We need to do something about it. And they started an organization, Utahns Against Gun Violence. And then at some point, that morphed into the Gun Violence Prevention Center of Utah. Um, and we are now the state affiliate of a national organization called States United to Prevent Gun Violence. And what's really different, we work with all the other gun violence prevention organizations. We all meet together and collaborate together, and it takes a lot of voices. But what's different about our organization is that they're not top down. They don't tell us what to do in Utah. They give us leeway. In Utah, we have a very big problem with gun suicide. Not every state has that. We have a lot of gun owners. We have a lot of people who have grown up owning guns. Not every state has that. Some states have high gun crimes. We have relatively low gun crimes. We do have a high domestic violence gun issue here. So, each state is unique. And so they help us do what we think would be best in Utah to decrease our gun violence issues here. So it's a really good thing because a lot of organizations are top down and they tell people what to do, and it just is not necessarily a good fit for that state.
So, I want to address an issue of perception with regards to organizations like the GVPC, and that is how do such organizations how do such organizations address the idea or belief that organizations like the GVPC are somehow working to eliminate gun ownership across the board when that is actually not the case?
Yeah, I this idea that we're coming for your guns is an idea that is pushed by the gun lobby and by the pro-gun organizations, and it to inspire fear and, quite frankly, to sell more guns. And I like to point out that you know, to say to those people, do you know somebody who has come and taken away somebody's gun without cause, without, there being a legal reason for that? I don't know anybody, and they don't know anybody either. And so I think that, helps to get people thinking, and quite honestly, we have a lot of gun owners who would like to see more gun responsibility, more gun training, more gun safety, a return to the kind of environment with guns that we had 40, 50 years ago. Um, yeah, we talk to a lot of gun owners, and they're on board with what we're doing.
Are there any involved in the GVPC?
Yes, we have a gun owner on our board. You bet we do.
I want to share some gun violence information for Utah and for the United States, just so we can get a scope of how far reaching gun violence is in our society. Focusing on Utah right now. Now, this is data that's been gathered from the organization called Every Town for Gun Safety. This is the latest information. 82% of firearm deaths in Utah are suicides, 14% are homicides, 3% are law enforcement related, 1% of firearm deaths are undetermined, and less than 1% are unintentional firearm deaths. The yearly average rate of gun deaths in Utah is 418 deaths. Utah also ranks 35 in gun law strength. Again, this is according to data gathered by the organization Every Town for Gun Safety. And now we're going to talk about some recent gun legislation later on. But first, with regards to that ranking, Nancy, how are Utah's gun laws currently?
Well, the Giffords organization in California ranks each state and gives them a letter grade each year based on their gun laws, and Utah gets an F. Um, we we had a D for a minute, but then we passed permitless carry, and we made our stand your ground law, which is, in my opinion, a bad law, and leads to more homicides, even worse. So we went back to an F. Um, we Our biggest problem, as you said, is gun suicide. The Utah legislature in 2018 authorized a study that was done by Harvard specifically in Utah, specifically around suicide. And it found that the number of gun owners that we have here and the easy access that people have to guns in a moment of crisis absolutely is fueling our gun suicides. A durable safe storage law could do a lot to prevent that. The legislature has had the opportunity to pass that and has not. An extreme rest protection order could also, it temporarily takes guns away from people who are in crisis. And the states that have enacted those, and there's a 20-year history in some states, so there's a lot of data behind this. Um, those states see a decrease specifically in gun suicide. So, again, that's a law that could really help us here. And the Utah legislature turns its back on that.
Let's talk a little bit about the legislative process for just a moment, and talk. Excuse me. Talk us through what a bill goes through, or how a law gets introduced in the legislative, what it goes through in the legislative process.
Sure. This is, I'll do my best. So, so the lawmakers, the representatives, will open a bill file and they'll submit a bill, and then it will go to the Rules Committee. And now, and in the past, some good gun laws have been just frozen in the Rules Committee. They never let it out of that committee. It never gets a vote. It never gets a hearing. It just sits there and languishes. Um, if it does get a hearing, then it goes to a small committee. It's like 8 to 10 people in either the House or the Senate, and there's a hearing. So someone will speak. The person who's supporting the bill will speak about that bill, about why they're putting it forward, and then they allow the public to speak for and against. And we are often in the room speaking either for good gun laws or against bad gun laws in that capacity in hearings. Because we have a supermajority, if it is a uh, a political issue, and guns in Utah are very much a political issue, it will often not make it out of that hearing. It will just be voted down on along party lines. Um, if it does pass, through the hearing process, then it goes on to whichever house. So if it's a House committee, it goes on to the full House for a vote. And if it's this a Senate committee, it goes on to the full Senate. And then if it passes that, it reverts over to the other body, goes through the hearing process, goes through the full voting process, and then it has to be signed into law by the governor.
Now, like we had mentioned earlier, there were a series of gun bills that were introduced during the last legislative session, which ended last week, I believe. And I'm going to list them and address each one. And if at any time I make a mistake on the information, Nancy, please feel free to correct me. First, there was Senate Bill 83, which was a bill that addressed the failure to safely store firearms. Then there was House Bill 307, which addressed law enforcement's actions regarding crimes where a lost or stolen firearm was involved. Following that is House Bill 46, which dealt with the retail sale of firearms. And finally, House Bill 119, which involves teachers carrying firearms in schools here in Utah. Now, starting off with Senate Bill 83, which was the bill that addressed the failure of safely securing firearms, what were the specifics of the bill and how would that have addressed public safety?
So right now in Utah, uh, we do have a safe storage bill, but honestly, you literally have to, as an adult, hand a gun to someone, a minor or someone who's prohibited, and tell them to go shoot somebody. It's really the lowest level. It's sort of um, you know, it's sort of ingenuous to, to say that it's a safe storage law because the bar is so high. The Utah Shooting Sports Council said that the woman in Michigan who gave the gun to her son and he caused the school shooting, he thought that that would have, um, that same judgment would have been made in Utah. I hope that's true, but I'm not sure. um, so in states that have durable gun storage laws where there are, if you don't store your gun safely and then it is used in a crime or it is used to cause harm to someone, you're liable. And what we find is that in those states, it really makes a difference. People do pay attention to the law, and people go, oh gosh, I better lock up my gun. This is serious. I'm responsible. Versus, oh, I'm not responsible here. I can just leave that in the top drawer of the bedside table. Um, it saves a lot of lives. These are absolutely good laws. That particular bill was squashed in a committee hearing. So it went down along party lines, and that's often what we see. It's not the first safe storage bill that has been. In fact, we've been trying to pass safe storage bills forever. So it's not the first one that they've squashed.
So you had mentioned that Senate Bill 83 failed to make it in the legislature, and you said it was because of due to party line. And what's next? Now that that has failed, what's in store for the future with regards to that particular legislation?
Well, Representative Stoddard, who brought that bill forward, has been a champion of safe storage. And so I believe that either he or someone else will continue to bring those bills forward, and try to get a conversation going, try to get some movement. Um, yeah. So I think that we could look forward to a safe storage bill next year. Certainly, when people speak out in favor of that kind of bill, it helps to move the process along. It helps to, if they have a representative who's on the committee and they call as a constituent and say, you know, let's do something. Let's about our suicide problem here. Let's get a durable safe storage bill here in Utah and save some lives. That helps.
The next piece of legislation we're going to talk about is House Bill 307, which addressed law enforcement's response to crimes involving lost or stolen firearms. That bill also failed in the legislature, from my understanding. Again, let's talk specifics. What were the specifics of that bill, and how would that have addressed public safety?
So this is a an excellent bill brought by Brian King, correct? I think this is Brian King's bill. Yeah, and it's a data bill. And Representative King ran several bills in a row to try to close the private sales loophole, the loophole in our background check system that allows private sellers to sell a gun without conducting a background check. He tried over and over again, and this bill is sort of connected to that in a different way. It says, let's look at the guns that are showing up in crimes and find out where they're coming from. How many of those guns actually were sold in a private sale without a background check? Because if there are a lot of them and that could, deter a lot of crime, that's definitely something we want to do. So this is an excellent bill. And, I think it got farther along last year in the process than it did this year. And I'm not sure, I was not present in that hearing, so I'm not sure. But again, I'm sure it went down along party lines. The reality in Utah is that the gun lobby owns a lot of our Republican legislators, and they don't necessarily give a reason. They just go to them and say, "You're going to vote against this, or we're going to run you out of office." Um, it's a very sad reality, but that's sort of the way it is.
Let's talk a little bit, let's divert a little bit and talk about the gun lobby and how active you said they're very active here in Utah. Okay. Can you talk about just for edification, who exactly the gun lobby is, who it comprises of, and the kind of influence they have over politicians?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So let's rewind a little bit. Why would the gun lobby be so active in Utah? And the answer is that we have a lot of gun industry here in Utah. If Wallet Hub did does a thing each year where it rates states by the amount of gun industry in each state, and I think Utah is like 17th. We have a lot of gun industries here. We have Silencer Co. We have the the big organization that produces gun silencers is here in Utah. But there are a lot of gun manufacturers and gun part manufacturers here in Utah. And so they are obviously supporting organizations like the Utah Shooting Sports Council, which is our main on the ground gun lobby here in Utah. And the spokesperson for that is Clark Potion. Um, but they are also very much tied into the National Rifle Association. So for hearings, they will often bring in NRA lawyers to speak, and people at the national level, people who, let's just say, sway the statistics the way they want them swayed to benefit their industry. And they are all about selling guns. That's what you have to understand about the gun lobby. Their job is selling guns. 40, 50 years ago, the NRA was an organization that was all about sportsmanship and was all about safety. And when Wayne LaPierre came in, all of that went out the window. Now, their bottom line is to sell as many guns as they possibly can. And honestly, they don't care who gets hurt in the process.
Wasn't Wayne Lapierre recently found to have taken money from the NRA?
He was. Yes, and the NRA has, because of that, and not just Wayne LaPierre, but other people involved in that organization, um, they have um, they have lost a certain amount, a big amount of money, and a certain amount of power. but the National Shooting Sports Council has taken over for them. And that is the national organization over our Utah Shooting Sports Council. And they work in concert. They do the same things. And so, you know, is it good that the NRA has been defanged a little bit? I would say yes. Um, do we still have a gun lobby problem? I would say also yes.
Going back to House Bill 307, that particular bill was sent to the Public Utilities Committee to be heard, which is unusual for a bill that addresses gun violence to be sent to a Public Utilities Committee. Can you explain why that was done and how it was reasoned to be sent to that committee in the first place?
Last year, they sent gun bills to natural resources, just FYI. So, yes. And the reason that they do that is they're cherry picking committees that have a lot of rural representatives. So, they're cherry picking committees where because they know that the people in rural Utah are very pro gun and will not give their representatives a hard time about this. Whereas along the Wasatch Front, more and more people are speaking out to their representatives and saying, hey, you know, I, I'm scared to send my kids to school. What are you doing about gun violence? And, when are the numbers going to start going down? Our representatives along the Wasatch Front up and down are hearing, and they don't want to be on those committees because they don't want to have to register a vote that they know the gun lobby is going to require them to register.
Does that happen a lot um, in politics? I mean, especially when you're dealing with legislation, and why? And if it does, why is that?
So let's talk about the real damage of a supermajority. This is the real damage of a supermajority. A supermajority means that in any body in our legislature, whether it's a committee or whether it's a house or whether it's the Senate, one side really doesn't have a voice at all. But I mean, they can speak, but they're not listened to because the other side doesn't have to listen to them. They don't need their votes at all. If we had a simple majority of Republicans, they would have to reach across the aisle and listen to these things. And I mean, democracy is meant to be a melting pot of ideas. And they would actually have to incorporate some of these good ideas and consider these things. With the supermajority, they don't. It is very detrimental to the health and well being of Utahns.
Now, the bills that we just covered were bills that the GVPC of Utah advocated for. How closely does the GVPC work with lawmakers on legislation, and what does that work involve?
We talk to the lawmakers. They reach out to us and say, "I'm thinking about running this bill. What do you think?" Usually, we let them decide what they want to run here, and then you know we will bring up any concerns we have or any additional thoughts, but we let the lawmakers, that's their job. They're there to make the laws, and then we will speak for or we will speak against bad bills. Of course, you know the the pro gun side doesn't reach out to us, so we don't hear a lot from them.
The next bills that we're going to be talking about were ones that the organization opposed. The first one is House Bill 406, which addressed the retail sale of firearms. Again, speaking specifics, what were they of the bill and why did the GVPC oppose the bill?
This is about groups that want to divest themselves from the gun industry. Okay, and and what it does is it shows the consumer where a retailer has a part of their business that is with the gun lobby, with the gun industry. Okay, And a few years back, in fact, this was the first sort of chink in the armor of the NRA. Um, Groups got together. I think it was shortly after Parkland, and they said there are a lot of organizations. There are a lot of civic organizations and a lot of other organizations that are unwittingly supporting the gun industry through like investments. So through corporate, um, you know, investment things. And they said, if we raise awareness about who these groups are, they will likely pull out of that and not invest there. So their big group funds. And in fact, this happened. And there were a lot of people that had the NRA had given credit cards to, and this and that benefits, and not just the NRA but other groups, and they pulled back, and it made a difference. So now the gun lobby is pushing to protect those organizations. They want to protect that extra money that's coming into their coffers. And so this bill was trying to stave off people being able to identify, oh, this group is linked to the gun industry, and maybe I don't want to shop there, maybe I don't want to invest my retirement money there. Maybe I will choose something different that aligns with my beliefs better,
Why did the GVPC oppose the bill?
because we think that people should be able to see what they're investing in. We think that people should know if a company is linked to the gun industry. We believe in freedom. People should be free to. It's your money, and you should be free to invest it, or in this, over here or over here. And yeah, we thought that was a bad bill because it kept people from seeing. It hides that information from people, and it doesn't let them make a good decision for themselves.
So it looks like the bill was approved by the Senate and was sent to the House for a signature to probably be approved before it goes to the governor's desk. If signed into law, what impact will that have, or what will it mean for public safety?
Again, I think it's there are so many laws that are putting blinders on ordinary people. Um, there are the voter suppression laws, where uh, they're keeping a certain group of people, trying to keep a certain people from voting. This is a bad bill in that way. So it gives more money, because it doesn't allow people to necessarily see um, what they're investing in. It gives more money to the gun industry, which I think is always what the gun lobby's about, and it sort of impinges on our freedoms.
Lastly, there is House Bill 119, which is a legislation addressing teachers carrying firearms in schools. This particular bill is now headed to Governor Spencer Cox's desk for a signature. And you had a press conference about it this morning at the state capitol, and you're asking Governor Cox to veto the bill. First off, let's talk a little bit about the press conference and what the details of the bill. What were the details of the bill that made it so controversial?
Yeah. So this bill, I mean, we already arm teachers here in Utah, which we disagree with. And most parents disagree with it. Most students disagree with it. Um, Most teachers disagree with it. Um, there are a lot of people who think that arming teachers is a very bad idea, but we do already arm teachers here in Utah. And the Gun Violence Prevention Center believes that anyone who's armed should be trained. Um, Now, 3 years ago, they did away with um, the concealed carry classes. So that means there's no training here in Utah required. And it's sort of interesting that now they're saying, oh, but we want to train teachers. and we want to spend education money to do that. Um, every gun owner should be trained. We don't think that that money should come out of the education fund. Maybe the gun lobby should fund that. They're the source of those guns that are ending up in our schools. Maybe they should fund that. But it should not come out of education money. Uh, Utah is number 50. We are last in per pupil education money spent. So to take any money out of education and use it for anything other than education is wrong. Okay, that's the first thing. But the worst thing about this bill is what's underneath. I mean, we agree that gun owners need more safety training. We disagree with where the money comes from. The worst thing is that they want to remove liability from teachers if they shoot someone. And that we believe that any gun owner needs to be responsible if they shoot someone. They need to be liable for the circumstances. And removing that liability um, with someone who is not fully trained like a law enforcement person, we just think that's a very dangerous mix. Um, they're talking about just one class a year for these teachers. Uh, the law enforcement people who have to deal with active shooter situations train every month. And they train in simulation, they train live fire, they train under high pressure. You cannot expect a teacher with one training a year to attain that kind of competency. It's just not realistic, and it's dangerous. Um, there's no study that shows that arming teachers makes school children any safer. There's no study that shows that. This is not evidence based at all.
In a June 2022 article from in the Salt Lake Tribune, Governor Cox was noted as having said that a school shooting like the one in Uvalde, Texas, was bound to happen in Utah at some point. He also said in the article, quote, "It's going to be devastating if I can't in good faith say we tried to do something."
There are a lot of things that we can do. And here's what you know, we're all worried about the school shooting. I think Governor Cox is right. I think it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And that's a very sad reality. But we have so many guns. Guns are already showing up at school. And it's very worrisome. We need laws that keep guns from ever reaching the door of the school. To capitulate and say, oh, we'll deal with it after an active shooter ends up in our halls is just rolling over and playing dead. It's just dumb. Um, safe storage laws. The vast majority of kids, of guns that end up at school come from homes. They're being taken from their own homes. And those guns are being, guess what? Not stored properly. We need a safe storage law. Extreme risk protection order. You know, kids who know that someone is going through a rough time and they start posting on social media, crazy stuff, you know, somebody should be able to swoop in and get that kid some mental health help. Let's spend some more on mental health help. Um, but let's don't arm more teachers, and let's don't and more guns in our schools is not gonna. It's just gonna create more trouble.
In 2023, or so basically last year, the Rand Corporation conducted a survey which found that more than half of teachers who were surveyed said carrying guns would make schools less safe, to your point. And another study that was published last year on the National Library of Medicine website found that parents felt, quote, security officers, not teachers, should be carrying firearms, and that armed police should be present in schools to provide safety. Now, with all this information available, Again, why would lawmakers pass HB 119 or any similar legislation, especially if a considerable portion of parents and teachers who are surveyed, like you said arming teachers is not the answer?
Again, it goes back to the gun lobby. The gun lobby wants to see this passed. If you arm more teachers, you're selling more guns to teachers. Initially, there was, gun safes in this bill, which is not a bad idea, but it's more money for the gun lobby. And that's the bottom line. The gun lobby is all about selling more for the gun industry. And this bill, again, is about selling more for the gun industry. It's not about safety.
Since the legislation has now passed, you're like again, you're asking Governor Cox to veto this bill. What other steps or how else is the GVPC intending to address the effects of this bill moving forward?
Well, we will certainly watch it. This bill had a huge fiscal note. Initially, it had $3 million out of the education budget, which was just unconscionable. It the fiscal note has gone way, way down. But what we expect is that if the governor does sign this, what they'll do is that they will pull pull money out of the education fund in the future. So we'll be watching that in future sessions to make sure that education money is not going um, to arm teachers.
Before we wrap up, I'd like to ask you, with regards to anyone who may be interested in this particular issue or who has a vested interest in gun legislation and its impact, what sort of things can a person do to be active in the discussion or to have an effect on Capitol Hill when the next legislative session rolls around?
Sure. Well, we always list a slate of bills that we support and don't support. So if you go to our website and sign up, you'll be on our email list and you'll get that kind of information. And then the most important thing you can do is put your lawmakers on speed dial during the session, and just even as simple as please oppose this bill, please support this bill, but we usually give talking points on bills, that are important. Um, Vote. Please register and vote. And uh, I know we're living in times where it's discouraging, but your vote matters. And you know, it's not just about the presidential vote, it's about all the votes down that ticket. And please do not just vote for one party or the other. Look at the candidates, look at their records, read about them. The League of Women Voters is a nonprofit organization that tells you, where the candidates stand on different issues, and is an excellent source if you don't know how to vote. But don't sit home. Please don't sit home. It's we need your vote.
Is there anything else that you want to add or cover that we haven't talked about that maybe you feel needs to be mentioned?
Well, we're an all volunteer organization, and if you really really are interested in this issue of gun violence prevention, there are a lot of different ways that you can volunteer with us. Again, if you go to our website, gvpc.org, you can just sign in, and there's a checkbox that says I'd like to volunteer. There are a few options that way. We do a lot of tabling in the summer. We do some events. We do data collection. We do research. I mean, there's something for everyone. So, if you're not a speak out kind of person, that's okay. There's always a way, and we need your voice. Oh, there is something we do every year, and that is we collect constituent comment forms. You will see us at the farmers market downtown. You will see us at county fairs and at different festivals over the summertime during the nice weather. And stop by our booth and just write a line or two on our constituent comment form. We don't tell you what to say. You decide which issue of gun violence, because there are a lot of different facets to this problem. it speaks most to your heart. But and then we hand deliver those to your legislators here in Utah and also in Washington D.C. And we collected over 2,000 comments last year. We would love to collect 3,000. It does make a difference. We put that stack of comments down on their desk and they go, "Oh, okay, people are upset about this. I better pay attention." So please fill out our constituent comment form.
All right, we've been talking to Nancy Halden with the Gun Violence Prevention Center of Utah. Nancy, once again, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and for sharing your insight with all of us.
Jacob, thank you for reaching out. It's my pleasure.